Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, and I would say that this brewery is just generally a very solid all-round one. They're one of the most established craft breweries in Sweden in my opinion, and one of the first ones that I encountered when I moved over here back in 2015. Now, the beer that we're looking at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget. It's a style that I know they can do very well, and it is actually among the strongest of beers that I've tried from them so far. So, needless to say, I'm very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. We're going to go out to the east of the city, to Landvetter, close to the airport, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Dugges Bryggeri. So this particular beer is called Dugges Most Mellow, or just Most Mellow I guess we could say. I've noticed that Dugges have started putting Dugges on their labels, but this particular beer comes in at 16.7% ABV, and they're describing this one as a Tennessee whiskey barrel aged Imperial very vanilla stout. So yeah, this was kind of interesting as well because I noticed on the website they talk about this one being in the Mega series, which is, you know, those are the big beasts from Dugges Bryggeri, but on the bottle it says Future. So I'm not sure whether this beer is technically a member of the Future series or the Mega series in that case, or whether the Mega series are part of the Future series inherently. You know, Dugges have so many different series of beers, it's a little bit difficult to keep track of actually. But this particular beer was released as part of the Tillfällig assortment at the beginning of October in 2022. But yeah, 16.7% Tennessee whiskey barrel aged vanilla Imperial stout. So yeah, this should be really interesting. So let's crack on with this one and see what we have. So as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dugges Bryggeri before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries you guys would like to see me review. Always great to hear from you guys that are watching the channel, and the support that you give is massively appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Dugges Bryggeri then. So Dugges Bryggeri, as I've mentioned to you already, are currently based in Landvetter on the kind of eastern outskirts of Gothenburg up on the Swedish west coast, the Swedish craft beer capital. But the brewery was established back in 2005 in Mölndal to the south of the city by Mikael Engström Dugge, whom of course it takes its name from, Dugges. But a few years prior to this, Mikael had actually met an Englishman who was selling second-hand brew kits, and this really got him thinking about brewing his own beer. So he studied the very complex Swedish alcohol laws, he went around and visited some of the other craft brewers that were around at the time, and then he started buying up equipment to put together his own brewery, and this culminated with the opening of the first Dugges Brewery in Mölndal back in 2005. Over the following years, they started to experiment with different styles. In the early days, these guys were actually known as Dugges Ale och Porter Bryggeri, so they were focusing quite a bit on brewing the darker beers, which of course they have become very well known for, and they were starting to experiment a little bit with some sour beers too, which were very interesting. But yeah, over the next few years they continued to expand, but by 2009 they'd outgrown their original facility, and so they moved to the Landvetter the following year in 2010. So the older brewery had a capacity of 1,500 hectolitres of beer per year, or 150,000 litres at maximum, but the new brewery started off with a capacity of 8,000 hectolitres, or 800,000 litres, but this has been more than doubled in recent years from what I understand. But over the years, as I say, for me, this brewery really became in the earlier days, they became best known for their kind of fruity sour beers, but also for their big imperial stouts. You know, Tropic Thunder is one of the classic Swedish sour beers, one of the first ones that was out there, and that really kind of you know, broke barriers for a lot of people, I would say. But also the Egypt and the Big Egypt, the imperial stouts that these guys did, those are some of the cult classic Swedish craft beers for me. But of course, in more recent times, they started experimenting a bit more with IPAs and things like that. They had the Fresh and the Crush series, which were the New England IPAs. They also had the Bite series, which were the West Coasters. I don't think they're really doing much with those series now. They are just kind of, you know, doing beers within those style categories. But they've done a series of wheat beers as well, if I remember correctly. But of course, there's a lot of focus on barrel aging as well. They've got the Future series and the Mega series, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, these guys are just a really solid all-round brewery, in my opinion. They do lots of nice things. I haven't had too many lagers from them, so I do need to explore that. But yeah, the other interesting thing I would say to point out about this brewery is that they are one of the co-owners of the two Brewers Beer Bars in Gothenburg. So the original one is on Långgatan, and that's the one I visited on the channel. You can check out the Out and About video there, but they co-own that along with Electric Nurse, who are owned by Mikael's daughter Ida and her husband John, and also All In Brewing, who are one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the area of Gothenburg. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Dugges Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on their social media. You can check out some of my older reviews that I've done from them, and of course you can check out the Untappd page to see all the different beers that these guys have done. Although I think there's quite a few beers missing from that page on Untappd. Actually, these guys have done a lot more than it says on Untappd, which is why I never tell you how many beers Dugges have produced according to Untappd. But yeah, as I say, check out all those links, but I think it's about time that we get on and have a little look at this one. So yeah, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this before we open up. As you can see, it is, you know, very similar to what we've seen from Dugges before. You can see the D, and as I say, this was the thing that confused me. If you look at the description of this beer on the Dugges website, it talks about it being in the Mega series, but yeah, you can see it has the Future symbols on it. There you can see Future. But it says on the side here, this is most mellow, around silky boom smoothness with slow-mo kick, FX. So yeah, it's vegan friendly apparently. As we said earlier, it's 16.7% Tennessee whiskey barrel aged Imperial very vanilla stout. Plain black bottle cap on this one. I forget what I paid for this beer. I think this might have been, I'm trying to remember. This one might have been about 100 kroner or something like that. But the other number that's in my head is 80 for this. It wasn't madly expensive actually for what it is. You know, a 16.7%er. Normally you'd expect to pay, you know, at home you pay about £15 for something like that, to be honest with you. So this was actually very cheap for what it is. So yeah, I paid, yeah, in the region of, you know, I think 8 or 10 euros for this beer. So just to give you guys a kind of rough price range. I forget the exact price of this one. But let's get it out and get on with the tasting then. The most mellow, 16.7% Tennessee whiskey barrel aged Imperial vanilla stout. Love vanilla, love Imperial stouts. And I've not tried too many Tennessee whiskies either, which was another reason this beer kind of took my fancy. And, you know, I can't remember what the last Imperial stout we had from Dugges was, actually. But, you know, as I say, I know this brewery do the style very well, so always worth trying. I don't want to waste the drops of this. There you go. That's it. So I think that'll do for the moment. So let me just line things up again so they look nice, and there we go. So anyway, as you can see and as you would expect from this beer, it's poured a lovely, very dark, ebony kind of rosewood colour, pretty much as black as you're going to get. So yeah, there are one or two tiny little bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass there. You can see the beer poured with pretty much zero in the way ahead. You've just got a nice little bit of a foamy ring around the edge of the glass, and I would describe that as being a sort of very light beige kind of fawn colour. It's not all that dark, but yeah, definitely if we shine the light through this beer, there is a little bit of a kind of Coca-Cola Pepsi coloured edge to it, maybe a little touch of chestnut, but yeah, this beer is pretty much black as night. It's as dark as you're going to get. There are one or two little wisps of foam on the top of the head there, or the top of the surface of the beer I should say. There's not really a head on this one, but yeah, it certainly looks the part. But yeah, not a lot coming through this beer. I meant to check actually whether it contains oats and wheat. Let me see. It says this one contains sugar, hops, and vanilla yeast. It doesn't actually. It just said, yeah, corn malt. Yeah, just barley malt in this one. So yeah, no oats and wheat. I was a bit surprised about that because normally oats and wheat are the things that kind of give you a bit of the opacity and a bit of haze. But yeah, in fairness, this one just looks very, very dark. So I'm guessing what they've probably done with this is done like a double or a triple mash with it. That's the most likely thing, but we'll see. The thing with Imperial Stouts is, you can do a lot of things with them. You can give them a longer boil to caramelise the sugars. You can do double and triple mashes and stuff like this to up the alcohol content. You can, of course, put bits of sugar and things like that in them to up it as well. So, yeah, we'll take, other than what we've said about the appearance so far, I don't think we need to say much more about it than that. So we should take a look at the aroma and see where it takes us. Let's do this. Oh yeah, that thing is an absolute monster. You can just smell that this is a big boozy beast already, but it's 16.7% ABV. It's not surprising. What I will say about it though is that the barrel aging just kind of adds a bit of depth to the beer. It doesn't take over as barrel aging can sometimes do, but yeah, aroma wise, I think this is pretty damn nice. Yeah, yeah, straight away with this one. The thing I will always say about American whiskey or bourbon compared to Scotch whiskey is Scotch whiskey is definitely a little bit drier and almost just a little bit spicier. The American um, bourbon is and whiskey is definitely sweeter, but that happens with pretty much everything. When the Americans get their hands on it, they make it sweeter. But anyway, with this one, the whole vibe of this beer is very, very nice. So let's just break it down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth. So yeah, backbone of the beer, you have, you can smell that nice, smooth American oak thing to it. So yeah, you've got that lovely smooth American oak with a little bit of vanilla to it, but then you can just smell the American whiskey sitting on top of that. And again, for me, that goes together very, very nicely actually. Yeah, I mean the American bourbons, I love the smell of them. I have to say, I do love the smell of them. When it comes to whiskey, I do love the smoky ones, but I like the Speysides and the Japanese and things. I do like the ones that are a little bit sweeter as well. But you definitely get the bourbons are even sweeter than those. So yeah, that lovely smooth American oak. You get a little bit of the vanilla in there. You can get a bit more oaky dryness toward the back of the nose actually. But then you've also got the as I say, you've also got that, sort of bourbony American whiskey brown sugar sitting on top of that. So yeah, the way this beer goes together though is absolutely lovely. I mean, on top of all of that, you can smell it has got this sort of chocolatey dryness to it. There's a bit of that kind of cocoa nibby dryness, I should say. But the chocolatey notes you get out of this one are like sort of 70-80% cocoa. It does have a little bit of a more milky chocolate to it as well, but that's probably because of the vanilla. You get a hell of a lot of vanilla out of this one, which you would expect from the description that they give you. But yeah, you get some of the drier kind of cocoa nibby chocolate out of this one. You get some of the more kind of 30%, 30-40% milk, cocoa milk chocolate as well. There's a good little bit of brown sugar in this one. So you've got a little bit of a toastier brown sugar as well. It's also got a little touch of a leathery character, so I'd be curious to know what the length of the wort boil in this beer is. But yeah, there's a lot of sweet kind of brown sugars to this one. That obviously is aided by the barrel aging side, the barrel aged side of the beer. But yeah, there's a bit of a toasty kind of caramel in there, some nice big oily sweetness to it as well. But yeah, there's a little touch of biscuity character for me. As I say, the brown sugar has a little bit of the complexity, a little bit of biscuit, oily caramel. You've also got a little bit of that, as we say, you also have a little touch of the, just a sweeter caramel as well. But yeah, this beer, it's actually kind of straight shooting in what it's going for. It's certainly not the most complex of Imperial Stouts that I've come across, but it just smells really quite nice. Although I would say the barrel aging just adds a little bit of depth to the beer, if you like. but the vanilla is quite apparent in this one. But you know, when you buy this beer, you see it on the label, you know what you're going to get. To be honest with you, other than that, I don't think we need to say much about the barrel aging or the yeah, I don't think we need to say much about the barrel aging with this one, or the how would you say, or the kind of hoppy, fruity side of things actually. Well, but I don't think we need to say more about the malty side of things. That's what I was just going to say. We're going to go on to the hoppy and fruity side of the beer. So for me, the hoppy side of this beer, there isn't too much to report on that actually. There's a little bit of earthiness in there. You get the little remnants, so you get a little bit of a remnant of a kind of floral and grassy vibe to the beer. But other than that, as I say, I don't think there is too much to report with this one. Yeah, aroma wise, this is pretty damn nice. So yeah, just a little touch of grassiness there at the front of the nose, wee bit of floral character behind it, but then yeah, very you know, a slightly smooth earthiness in there as well. So yeah, the way that this goes together is it's pretty cool actually. I like how the hoppy side of the beer just contributes to everything else. On the fruity side of the beer, the fruits are actually very subtle in this one. For me, I get a little touch of like an oily plum. There's a little bit of a kind of raisiny note to it and a bit of black currant sitting on top of that as well. So yeah, the way that this beer goes about all its business is nice. Yeah, a little bit of plum, a little bit of a kind of black curranty note as well, some juicy figs. Yeah, I think this beer goes together really quite nicely. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. I've got a feeling that I'm going to enjoy this one, I have to say. So let's tuck into it and see what we get. So yeah, this is the Dugas Most Mellow, a 16.7% Tennessee whiskey barrel aged Imperial Vanilla Stout from the Future series, or I don't know, it might be a mega. Correct me on the comment section below. From Dugas Brewery in Landvetter here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is really quite nice. Oh yeah, the aftertaste. What you'll find with this one straight away, the aftertaste, this beer, the kind of nuances of the flavors that you get are what you expect, but the nuances of the flavors are quite different in this one compared to the impression that the aroma gives you. But yeah, I'm going to say to Dugas once again, that's a pretty damn awesome Imperial Stout. I mean, my favourite Imperial Stouts that I've had from these guys, absolutely the Key and the Sidamo Dimtu, the two Imperial Coffee Stouts that they did with Hunter and Sons, the now defunct Hunter and Sons from Bristol in England. Those were those were awesome beers. I would love them to you know, do Imperial Stouts with different kinds of coffee beans. That would be awesome. You know, that's my dream for Dugas. But yeah, I mean, Egypt, the original one, the Egypt and the Big Egypt are both awesome beers. I've tried the Egypt. I've never reviewed Egypt on the channel. I would love to do that. So hopefully they can redo that one at some point. But this beer for me, what I would say about it is that it's one of the more kind of straightforward Imperial Stouts from Dugas, but at the same time, but it goes about its business really nicely. It's certainly not the most complex one I think I've had from them, but I really like the way this goes together. Sometimes, you know, simplicity is better, and this is one of the beers that kind of shows, yeah, doing things a bit more simply can be good. Although maybe when it's 16.7%, they might argue it's not as simple. But as I say, flavor profile for me is a bit more straightforward in this one, but I like it. I really do like this beer. So, yeah, where do we start with this one then? So, middle of your palate then, middle third of your palate, the backbone of the beer, you've got that lovely little bit of American oaky character in there. So that goes together really nicely. Um, so yeah, smooth American oak toward the front of that middle third of the palate. You get the little touch of vanilla from the wood itself. But then, yeah, on top of that, you can feel the layer of kind of American bourbon, American whiskey sugars. And I do like, as I say, I do like how that goes together for sure. Um, yeah, that is lovely. The barrel age, as I say, the barrel age side of this beer really comes out very nicely the further into the aftertaste that you go. And I think you can taste with the Tennessee with the kind of, I don't know if it's right to call it bourbon, they call it Tennessee whiskey. But I do like the way it goes. I do like the way that kind of comes out of it. It's really, it just gets like sweeter and sweeter, but it still has that very light toastiness to it. The further you go into the aftertaste, and of course it sits on top of the wood, which I think is very nice as well. So yeah, I think on top of the kind of whiskey bourbon layer, if you like, that's when you start to get the kind of chocolate and things coming out of this one, and it really is just you can tell just from the thickness of the malt in this beer that this is obviously like a double or maybe even triple mash. I'd be curious as to how many mashes they've done with this. But yeah, on top of that, you get the chocolatey character coming out of the beer. So you can feel there is a little bit of a layer of black malt in there. So you do get a little bit of that, you get a little slight touch of that very roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character. But then yeah, on top of that, if you go to the back of that middle third of your palate, you're getting all the kind of cocoa. You're getting all the cocoa nibs and things like that there. So you do get a little bit of that cocoa nibby dryness toward the back of that middle third of your palate, but on top of that, you can feel the sort of 70-80% cocoa chocolate sitting there. But as you move further forward toward the front of that middle third of your palate, you can feel the chocolate. You've got a bit of a gradient of the chocolate. It really just moves, and then you start to get the 30-40% cocoa chocolate coming out of this one. So yeah. Yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is quite nice. Yeah, you can feel within the front half of that middle third of your palate, you start to get, you get the nice oily kind of vanilla notes out of this one. There are one or two little nutty elements coming out within that as well. But as I say, the vanilla comes out more and more into the aftertaste. But I think there's an element of vanilla from the barrel aged side of things as well as the beer itself. So that is definitely quite interesting. So yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really nice. On the on top of the on top of that kind of chocolatey layer, you start to get some of the brown sugar. So it's almost like the chocolatey layers almost have like this little bit of a cup, and then the brown sugars just form a wee bowl that goes inside that almost. But yeah, you can feel there is like a really oily brown sugary character to this one. I would kind of go along the lines of like a treacle molasses type thing. It's not overly leathery, but there are little elements of leathery character in there. But yeah, you've got that big oily, thick brown sugary kind of thing coming out of this beer. So yeah, and the way, as I say, the way that goes together, I think is pretty damn nice as well. So yeah, you've got a little bit of leatheriness underneath, then you get the big treacly molasses sort of thing. There's a bit of sweet caramel in the dead centre of the palate, and then one or two little biscuity notes. The further as you go out from the centre of the palate, you get a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, interesting, this one. I think that's where you get the most complexity in this beer, is in that middle third of the palate, but it does go together really well, and I can feel the booze kind of going to my head already with this beer. This is a night ender beer, this one. Just as well I'm going for pizza after I drink this, because I probably need that. But yeah, In terms of, I think that's everything about the middle third of the palate. Let's look at the back third of the palate then. So the border region between middle and back third of the palate, you've got that nice, yeah, you do get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. So it's a bit more of a kind of, you get a little bit of a kind of brown bready, almost like chocolate brownie, muffin, cakey sort of thing. But the base of the back third of the palate, you can feel that the woody character gets that little bit drier. On top of that, you can feel again the bourbon brown sugars there. They feel just a little bit more toasty, and you can feel there is a sort of kind of quite dense, almost like as I say, a kind of muffin, chocolate muffin type quality there. That's on the back third of the palate. Then above that, you've got some of the lighter, kind of more airy, yeasty esters kind of coming out of the beer. So with that, you have, it's almost got a little touch of a kind of medicinally cough syrupy type quality to it, but yeah, it's like a very light kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of thing. There's a bit of brown sugar in there, and as I say, a little bit of that medicinal type quality. So yeah, I do like how all of that kind of pieces together in this particular beer. So yeah, definitely on the back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit, and the flavours squash together. So yeah, I like how this one, I do like how this one pieces together. The malty and barley side of this beer is really nice. As I say, this is not the most complex of beers that I've had from Dougas Brewery, but it goes about its business very nicely. Let's focus on the hoppy side of things then. So back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of smoothness in there, so there's a little bit of earthiness. As you move further forward, it gets a little touch herbal, but as you move toward the kind of front corners of the palate, it's definitely a little bit more kind of floral, I would say. Then round the front curve of the tongue, a little touch lighter and more grassy as well, actually. So yeah, I think that again that goes together very nicely for me. That you have to remember with barrel aged beers, most of the hoppy character is going to drop out, and the other thing with these as well, so you are going to sacrifice a little bit of the thickness of the mouthfeel when you use the barrel aging. But of course, you get all these infused flavors. But yeah, little touch of earthiness, wee bit of herbal quality, tiny remnants of floral notes, then a bit of smooth grassiness around the kind of front curve of the tongue. But yeah, the way that goes together is very, very nice. Yeah. So let's focus on that front third of the palate then and the fruity side of the beer. So the border region between front third and middle third of the palate, you get that nice little bit. You get that nice little bit of kind of bready build up. Again, it reminds me a bit of at the front of the palate, it's more like a kind of chocolate brownie or kladdkaka. Swedish chocolate cake. It's a bit more like that toward in that border region between front and middle third of the palate. The base of that, of course, you are still getting the nice smooth wood, and you're getting a little bit of the, as I say, you're getting a little touch of the, how would you say, the kind of bourbon sugars in there as well. Then on top of that, you're getting that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that. So yeah, when you take the beer in for me, for me it has a little bit of raisiny character to it, but it's actually a lot more kind of pruny, datey. It's all these kind of, yeah, it's absolutely more of these kind of dry fruity notes. So yeah, there's a little bit of raisin in there, as I say, a little bit of a pruny sort of note, dried plums, a little bit of a datey kind of thing. Then as you move further forward, you start to get a little toward the middle of that front third of your palate. There's a little bit more of a kind of figgy quality to it, and you've also got that little bit of just black currant as well. On the front half of that front third of your palate, it becomes more kind of black curranty, and there is a little bit of a more oily blackberry just sitting on top of that. And again, that gets bigger and bigger the further into the aftertaste you go. But this beer, it really is about the smooth American oak and the kind of bourbon American whiskey sugars just lingering there. Again, I can feel this beer going to my head as we go through it. It's this thing is a monster. That's one of the risks you have with these beers. These, these bottles really are made for sharing. But it's my day off today. I wanted, when I'm going for pizza, I thought, this is probably a good time to review it. Getting some carbs in after this beer is definitely necessary. But as I say, straightforward in its flavour profile, but quite nicely done. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So, mouthfeel wise for me, it's definitely full bodied. It's kind of maybe in the middle range of full bodied. It's not the thickest of Imperial Stouts that I've had, but yeah, mid range of full bodied. Carbonation is very, very smooth. It still has a little bit of that almost Nordic cleanliness. That's what I would call it, a bit of Nordic cleanliness in there. So at the same time, it's got a little bit of silky flavour to it, a little bit of silky feel to it as well. In terms of IBUs, this is not too high at all. This is more of a kind of sweet and smooth stout. I think you're talking about 40 IBUs at the absolute most with this, but you could be, I could be mistaken for thinking, for mixing up the kind of dryness that the beer has and the aftertaste with IBU, but yeah, I'm going to revise that, but 30 IBUs at most. The barrel aged side of things, as we said, has a little bit of dryness, a good little bit of sweetness to it, some nice malty character. Big brown sugary elements for me, then nice juicy fruity notes. The way that this beer goes about its business, I think, is really nice. The fruity notes for me, it has a little bit of a cakey element to it as well, but the nice big oily and slightly dry fruits that it has, those linger into the aftertaste as well. Really nice beer. It has definitely gone to my head in this review, so I think we should probably leave it there. But I think to sum this one up, it's not the most complex of Imperial Stouts you're going to find from Dugas, but it is, very nicely done. It's quite a straight shooter, this one, but the combination of the American or the Tennessee whiskey barrels and the vanilla and the kind of cakiness that this beer has, I think is very, very nice. But yeah, this was the Dugas Most Mellow. It certainly makes you very mellow, this beer. A 16.7% Tennessee whiskey barrel aged Imperial Very Vanilla Stout from Dugas Brewery in Landvetter. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dugas as well. We will be returning to these guys in a few videos time. We've got some IPAs to look at from them for this month. But I will catch you guys in the next one. This is this is an absolute monster. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys again soon. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.